All right, guys, we are back with LEC Wooloo himself joining us once again, which obviously means we got some kind of big story, big scoop, something like that to talk about. Today we have some news coming out of the European scene. This is going to be a little bit more related to the ERLs, but obviously, how these ecosystems and leagues and everything work. It all starts at the bottom and works itself all the way up. So hopefully this will be still some pretty exciting and interesting news that you guys, will find exciting. So I want to let Wooloo take it away and talk a little bit about what's going on over in Europe right now, or what's being worked on at least.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm excited for this news, and I think EU fans should be, because, there's been a lot of discussions, how can Europe be better? And we often say that it comes from developing talent. And there's one team in LEC that, they are good at like getting good players, but they don't really develop them at an early stage. Before that, they don't have an academy team. So we are talking about G2 esports, and yeah, the big news, in my opinion, is that G2 esports are in the process of making an academy team that will be competing in ERLs, the tier 2 of Europe next year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's pretty interesting. And like you said, I've seen, different, I don't know if it's like Reddit or Twitter or whatever, but I've seen whenever a team is struggling, or like, especially the big teams or teams that don't have academies, whenever these teams start to struggle or a player struggles or whatever, the fans are always like, oh man, I wish we had an academy team. Oh, I wish we had a way to, try out a new player. I wish we had a way to develop a new player to replace him or whatever. And, it does seem like a lot of fans are in favor of their team or their favorite team or whatever having some kind of system or trying to develop players and stuff like that, rather than every offseason having to go out and buy these players or pay this buyout or whatever. So yeah, I mean, this could potentially be something really, really big, and I think it's also something fans are going to be hopefully excited about, if this ends up all working out or whatever. Obviously it sounds like it's early on in the process and stuff like that, but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, if it goes good, obviously this is something with a ton of potential. Obviously G2 hasn't had the academy recently. I know they've had it in the past and stuff like that before. Is there a reason why they're looking at this now, like considering obviously in the past they thought it
Yeah.
wasn't worth it or they didn't want to or whatever? Like
Mhm.
what's changed? Why now?
Yeah. So, as a reminder, G2 used to have an academy team in the Spanish league. It was called G2 Arctic, and actually they've had quite a few interesting names in the team back then. Oscar Renin,
Mm-hmm.
current top laner of Fnatic, has been a player for G2 Arctic, but also Supa and Alvaro, both Spanish. I mean, all those players are Spanish into Spanish league. Honestly, it was um, they had quite interesting names despite that. So yeah, they did have this team in the past, but for the past 3 years, G2 have had no academy team. Um, I don't really know why. I heard that for G2 it's okay. I did also okay. I do know a little bit that um, G2, they don't consider it worth it money wise, to have an academy, because they can just pay players that they want to have, and there's it's probably less costly than also having the academy team. Um, but what's changing now is that G2 is seeing an opportunity, possibly on the German market, into the Prime League, and they are considering to join to German ERL. Um, and yeah, as you said, this is early. It's not decided yet because G2 actually don't have a German league spot yet. They are also considering other regions of Europe if this doesn't work out, with aiming with another market and other people from this market. But right now there is a project to join the German league in partnership with a team named Nor Esports, which you guys may know because Nor Esports were in NLC this year fighting against Los Ratones. It was the team of Jankos. Jankos played in this team this year. So G2 and them would be joining forces, but not into NLC, into Prime League or in another league. This remains to be seen. But yeah, that's the project for now. They would maybe try to have German players on the roster, and they will even partner with a big German influencer in Germany. So I believe this has some potential. You know, there's a lot of those big French teams with big names, those Spanish teams with big names, and Germany, one of the biggest countries in Europe in terms of league players, in terms of fandom in esports. Um, doesn't have, you know, this really big German team. Like, let's be honest, SK Gaming is not, you know, to German team to follow, you know. So I think there's an opportunity for G2 to aim towards the German markets.
Yeah, and I think we've seen teams go about, ERLs a little bit differently, depending on, some of them go for like rookies and try to develop and, they want to, maybe work their players up. And then some teams are also just going for, hey, we want to win and build a fan base in the ERLs because, yeah, like you can get a really popular ERL team if you're winning and you're making it to EU Masters and all this stuff and competing for titles. And, now you're playing against Los Ratones and all this different stuff. Like, do you have any insider ideas of what maybe G2's goals would be with a team like this? Do they want to go super young? They want to win? Do they want to sell off players to make money? Like,
Mhm.
I know there's different things you can do when you have those different teams and options.
Yeah, definitely. So, as I said, I will be aiming, you know, to target the German market, but the objective of the roster will really be to build like a roster of upcoming talents who are strong enough to win as well. So, from what I'm hearing, I don't expect, you know, one of those ERL teams where it's like all former LEC players, you know. That's not really aimed towards development. I expect a lot of strong ERL players who have not, you know, been to LEC yet, and that will be really competing to win the German league, which is feasible, and to compete at EMEA Masters. So no, it's definitely not like a full German project or, you know, just an ERL team trying to win with you know a bunch of LEC players. No, they really want to have rookie players, which is why I think it's good news because we also want G2 to contribute, you know, to to developing the players of tomorrow for the LEC.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if they're one of your region's top organizations and, they're the ones who have like the pedigree of winning and they know like how to play the right way and the right styles and all that, like, yeah, you want those players getting into systems and organizations like that as early as possible, rather than, having them start out with some weaker organizations and maybe develop and then, hey, we're going to end up on G2 in 3 years and then G2 is going to start figuring it out from there, which can be a little bit more complicated and stuff like that. I know we've also seen like the stories about changes coming to the ERL, like how the eligibility rules are going to work on where your players have to be like
Yeah.
nationality wise and stuff like that. Does that help this project? Does that make this maybe a better time to do this or a more attractive venture or anything like that? Does that have anything to do with why G2 is choosing to do this
Mm,
now?
honestly, I think it's completely unrelated. So yeah, Riot Games will not force ERL teams to have players from the region they are playing it. So that means if you play in the German league, you will have no obligation by Riot Games to have German players. Now each league itself have to green light from Riot Games to still force their own rules. So it's still possible that the German league decide to limit German players in a roster, decide to, I mean, to force German players on rosters, you know. But I don't think it has an impact because regardless of this rule, G2 esports, they will aim to have, you know, a few German representative on the roster, but by aiming, you know, for the best talent possible in that role. So I think, to be honest, in general, I expect that even with the removal of this rule, teams are still going to prioritize when they can talents from their region. And you can see it in LEC, you know, like um, Koi in LEC, they have 3 Spanish players. No, they have 4 Spanish players. I'm sorry. But Riot Games didn't enforce any rule to no, hey, you need to have Spanish players. They
Right.
chose it themselves. So I don't think this rule is going to change a lot of things. It will only allow teams who want to have like the 5 best players possible that they don't have any local limitation. But I still expect, you know, more French players in the French league or German players in the German league. So yeah, to me it's completely unrelated. Um, if if there is any link, but I'm going a bit too far is that it seems that Riot Games are making changes for the future. In 2027, I expect the ecosystem to change quite a lot, from how it goes from tier 3 to tier 2 to tier 1. And I expect more changes, more dynamics between each tier of competition and the LEC. So maybe G2 Esports, who are an LEC team and know about those upcoming changes, see something interesting to build an academy
Mhm.
team for those future changes. And that's where I can maybe see a link, because that's why I see those restrictions removed in ARL again, because we are maybe looking forward to more unification of the system. So in that sense, those rules also don't make that much sense. But that's a bit far-fetched, but I'm
Yeah,
answering you
we're
honestly
getting
the
way
question,
out in the future
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah. So we'll see, but there's a lot of directions that decisions that go towards this direction, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. I'm not leaking something, but yeah, that's the only link I could see. But probably doesn't isn't the reason why they make an academy team right now.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is something that I'm definitely very, very excited about. Like I said, I'm a big fan and in big favor of more resources, more teams, more, everything getting involved in the ERLs, getting involved in player development. I think it's going to lead to more opportunities for players, more opportunities, hopefully more eyeballs on the ERLs, all that stuff. So, yeah, I'm always a fan when teams are getting more involved rather than less involved. And, I hope that the ERLs and the
Yeah,
players will see benefit, but also I hope it ends up being a benefit to G2 as well. If it gets them a player later on down the road, or if it helps them make some money or whatever, or helps grow their fan base. I think there's a lot of different cool ways and avenues that this could potentially go. So I hope this ends up working out. I hope this is something they're able to make work. But either way, I appreciate bringing this info to us, and I hope, like I said, hopefully we'll get some more updates about this in the future as well. This is definitely a story I'm going to be keeping my eye on at least personally.
yeah. So again, this project for now it's a project stage. They already contacted players and everything to be part of the project. But once this is finalized, we will put news out on Ship Esports, and obviously about the players they will get on the roster, which I'm also super excited about. So yeah, thank you, Jem, and I hope everyone stays tuned.
Of course, always plenty more coming soon.
Bye.